Hello and welcome friends to this second lecture on B.R. Ambedkar. In the previous lecture we have discussed his education, his personal life, his political engagement and many of his political campaign to fight against the caste oppression or caste discrimination, and many satyagrahas to assert the Dalits or untouchables access to public places like tanks, temples or wells. And also we have discussed his differences on the question of caste from the reforms movement or the political position being taken by Congress or its leadership including Gandhi. And then we have also discussed his views on partition. Now today in this lecture we will focus his views on caste by looking at his text Annihilation of Caste, and on the basis of this text we will try to understand many of the insights or the critical assessment that he provides about the caste and caste as a problem to form a society or a nation which is based on the principle of fraternity or which allow mutual respect among the fellow beings. So how caste and caste based discrimination plays a role of hindrance or impediments in forging such relationship which is based on the question of conception of liberty, equality, fraternity or mutual respect. So we will study these from this text, and also we will try to understand his difference from Gandhi, and the role of such differences was not a kind of antithetical to each other, but they also shared a lot of common vision or similar visions for the future of India that we will also discuss by concluding this lecture. So to begin with his views on caste, and the two quotation I have cited here is from the original text he wrote in 1936, which is titled as Annihilation of Caste. So in this text he quoted Buddha and writes, "No truth as truth and untruth as untruth." This is the toughest task for any individual, political activist or a thinker to identify, to understand or to recognize truth as truth or untruth as untruth. So this is the intellectual task or responsibility of any individual to understand or to examine or to identify the real problems, the root cause of such problems and how to eradicate such problems. So Ambedkar do not have a kind of philosophical or philosophical in the sense of merely speculative exercise about the caste issue and how to reform it and how to solve the caste and untouchable problems. He was having a very rational approach to first understand the caste and what sustains the caste, what is the root cause of the reproduction of this caste based discrimination in everyday life, and what could be the effective solution to the caste system. So he was then not a kind of mysterious or a kind of skeptical approach towards the social problem. So he in my assessment by this quotation mean the responsibility of a thinker or an individual political activist is to understand what is truth and understand it as truth or untruth as untruth. And the second, which comes more closer to his approach towards a lot of social and political problems in India, and also the solution that he was providing from the Drummond quotation, that is, he that will not reason is a bigot, and he that cannot reason is a fool, and he that dare not reason is a slave. So the reason or rationality is the very basis of thought or understanding for Ambedkar, and he categorized different kind of individuals on the basis of their capability or their use of reason among the bigot or a fool or a slave. and therefore in his understanding of social problems or social challenges in India, he wanted to have a rational or logical approach to understanding or identifying the problem, and then providing a rational or logical solution to overcome it or to forge a relationship which will allow India to develop or emerge as a nation based on the principle of fraternity and equality. So the question of region remains very crucial to his political and social thought. Now if we come to this text on Annihilation of Caste, this text was prepared basically as a lecture or as an address to the annual conference of Jat Path Turak Mandal in Punjab. So in 1936, Ambedkar was invited by the Jat Path Turak Mandal, a Hindu caste reform organization based in Punjab, to deliver the presidential address at their annual conference. When Ambedkar sent them the text of his address, the invitation was withdrawn following disagreements over certain passages in the text. Now this gives us a sense of differences even among those who were fighting for social reforms, fighting for removing untouchability, or to solve the caste system, or to remove or to fight the caste system or caste based discrimination. So there are different layers even among those who were trying to fight for social justice, especially those who were fighting for reforming the caste or fighting untouchability. So this Jat Path Turak is one of such Hindu social organization committed to social reform, but they withdraw their support to the Ambedkar because of certain certain passages where this organization differ from Ambedkar, and that gives us a sense of the sharpness of the differences between Ambedkar and the Congress and many other organizations also committed to social and economic reforms, as also they were fighting for the political freedom. So this invitation was withdrawn. However, Ambedkar went ahead and published this address, which is entitled as Annihilation of Caste, and this becomes one of the most influential works on caste system in India. Ambedkar wrote many things, and here one needs to emphasize on this point, annihilation. So the Ambedkar is not talking about reforming caste system, he is talking about annihilating, just doing away with this whole system of caste. So therefore his response is very different from the Congress and the Gandhian and many other organizations such as Jat Path Turak Mandal about caste reform. So for Ambedkar, the issue or the objective is not just to reform the caste, but to annihilate the caste, and without such annihilation there is no possibility of forging a relationship based on fraternity or mutual respect or equality. So he was so dissatisfied with the contemporary activities of Hindu social and religious reforms movement that in the preface of this work he wrote, and that gives us the sense of his anguish or his anger against not just the outdated or exploitative system of caste, but also the reforms that was being undertaken by many organizations or activists. So in this preface of Annihilation of Caste, he writes, "What can anyone expect from a relationship so tragic as the relationship between the reforming sect of caste Hindus and the self-respecting sect of the untouchables?" Now this point one needs to understand the relationship between the reforming sect of the caste Hindus and the self-respecting sect of untouchables, where the formers have no desire to alienate their orthodox fellows and later have no alternative but to insist upon reform being carried out. So this gives us the real sharp confrontation between two set of social reform movement. One is led by caste Hindus trying to reform the caste and yet not willing to alienate their orthodox elements. So you might have heard about the initial decades of Indian Renaissance, where there is emphasis on social reforms, religious reforms, gender reforms, or providing education to the women, reform in the family, but these are not extended to reform the whole structure of caste, which reproduces differences, which is exploitative, or which subjugate or which exploit and oppress the vast number of untouchables. Now, to this kind of this set of social reforms, Ambedkar was saying that their reform is not to reform the family or to reform the system, but to assert, which is about the self-respecting sect of the untouchable. So, the assertion of self-respect or dignity or fighting for the self-respect and dignity, that is very different from the reformist or a kind of reformist approach where orthodoxy continue to be practiced or to be included in this approach or in their movement for social reforms. So, Ambedkar was clearly distinguishing between these two set of reformers, where one is about reforming the family or caste that concerns their lives or their collective self, but the other hand, the movement that was being led by Ambedkar and many organizations, which is about fighting for this self-respect. So, the question of reform to contain or to continue with the orthodox elements or to include the orthodoxy, not to alienate them, that is being practiced by many organizations or groups. On the other hand, Ambedkar was promoting or leading a movement or identifying the movement which is about asserting the self-respect, fighting for the self-respect and dignity, and therefore the two is often at loggerhead with each other, and Ambedkar is focusing more towards these social reforms. At this point, one also needs to understand that when we were fighting for the political independence, and I have been referring to this again and again in my previous lecture, that there is a kind of shift in our anti-colonial struggle, where we have started from social religious reforms movement, but then the priority was shifted to political independence and political freedom first, and then it was being thought out by many leaders or groups that political freedom can also be achieved first, and we should all come together to fight for our political freedom. The social reforms and other things we can tackle later on once we achieve the independence. But many people, or Ambedkar in the next lecture when we will discuss his views on liberal democracy and constitutional morality, will see that how he continued to argue and caution the constitution maker that political independence or political democracy without social and economic democracy will be meaningless. It will not work for long, and so many leaders and groups were arguing about simultaneous or continuous focus on or fighting for the social reforms or the social hierarchy that was there. So, here in this slide one gets the sense that for Ambedkar the objective is not just to reform and continue to include the orthodoxy and orthodox element in the society, but to annihilate, but to remove this whole, eradicate the whole system of caste and caste based discrimination. So, in Annihilation of Caste, Ambedkar probably for the first time raised many profound questions about the caste system or regarding the caste system. The caste system is governing principle of Hindu society. So, every sphere of life from birth to death, in social to economic to religious to culture to political life of Hindu society is by and large governed by the caste, and these castes are unequal in ranks, and these inequalities deeply disturbed Ambedkar, and he himself was subjected to such discrimination and humiliation based on caste discrimination. So, he was deeply disturbed by such differences or humiliation, and that compelled him to strongly criticize Hindu society, and also he gradually developed critique of Hindu religion as such. So, for him Hindu religion or Hindu society is a sick society in many ways, and it is interesting that when many people argue about the continuous existence of Hindu civilization for millennia, for Ambedkar that is not heroic. If society which cannot treat its own fellow members with respect, with dignity, and continue to reproduce differences and treat others with contempt, that kind of existence for Ambedkar is simply disgusting or not acceptable, and certainly not something which one can celebrate. So, he gradually developed his criticism, and later on he, as we have discussed in our previous lecture, converted to Buddhism because of his hope, or any hope that he might have had about reforms or reforms within the Hindu religion to eradicate or annihilate caste. He considered, or he completely lost the faith of any reform, certainly after the Hindu code will controversy, or the conservatism or orthodoxy and its domination on the polity, society and economy of India, that he later on converted to Buddhism, and he from 1930s onwards itself developed a kind of distance or a kind of critique to this whole religious edifice of Hinduism, and continuously said that I was born a Hindu, but I will not die as a Hindu, and that remains continuously. But before doing that, he of course studied many religions, including Sikhism, Christianity, Jainism, and finally decided to convert to Buddhism, which he did in 1956. So, he argued that the graded inequality is the normative anchor of the caste system, and it restricts the reach of equality to the members of lower castes. So, the inequality or the caste based discrimination that is there in India is graded. That means the position or the treatment that a member of a particular caste will receive from the member of other caste will depend upon the station of their community in the hierarchy of the caste system. So, everyone do not suffer the same kind of differences or same kind of humiliation or discriminations. Their humiliation or discrimination or contempt or admiration, everything depends on the status of their existence or their group in the caste hierarchy. So, this is a very complex system of graded inequality, and therefore he argued that it is very difficult to unite all the caste to fight against the whole system, because there are contempt, discrimination or humiliation, at the same time simultaneously they privilege that is associated to such a system also. So, this graded inequality or hierarchy is a normative anchor of caste system which restricts the reach of equality to the members, especially of the lower caste. So, the member of different castes cannot be treated equally because of this graded inequality that pervades all sphere of Hindu society. So, regarding untouchability, he said, untouchability is not a simple matter, it is the mother of all poverty and lowliness, and it has brought us to the abject state we are in today. If we want to raise ourselves out of it, we must undertake this task, and we cannot be saved in any other way. It is a task not for our benefit alone, it is also for the benefit of the nation. Now, he is making an interesting point here, where he is saying that, or it is also perhaps necessary for us to understand or make a distinction between the caste system or untouchability, or the question of untouchability. So on caste he has written very extensively, but all his fight, of course there is a kind of interconnection between the caste system which leads to untouchability, but the caste system and the caste society is very different from those who are excluded from the hierarchy or the question of untouchability. And throughout his life he was politically involved in the struggle for fighting for self-respect and dignity of the untouchable. So for him this untouchability is the root cause or the mother of all poverty and lowliness among the untouchables, and that has brought us to the abject condition where it is very difficult even to consciously understand that one is subjected to humiliation or discrimination. So one voluntarily submit to such humiliation or condition and consider it as their fate, as their lot because of their birth. So from that abject condition of existence to rise and to fight for the self dignity or self respect is what Ambedkar was trying to achieve and trying to fight for. So and that fight for Ambedkar then cannot be led by any other groups, or be it Congress or be it colonial government, but the untouchables themselves have to fight for such status, such self respect. So we have to remember that when there was a negotiation between colonial government and Congress and the Muslims, he was trying to create a autonomous or a separate political group of untouchables and to safeguard their interest and their protection, and for that he was trying to have constantly negotiation, and he succeeded to a great extent in achieving those safeguards for the untouchables, both from the colonial rule through different round table conference and legislation, and also from the Constituent Assembly where he was the chairman of the drafting committee. So his understanding about such fight for self-respect and dignity can be achieved only when untouchables fight for themselves. So there is no expectation from other groups or other organizations fighting on their behalf for their self-respect. And this movement, this struggle for Ambedkar is not just for their own benefit but for the benefit of a nation, because for Ambedkar the possibility of a political community without social equality and the sense of fellow feeling or fraternity is unsustainable, and therefore he was very skeptical about the prospect of India as a nation which continue to practice such exploitative system as caste or untouchability. So his criticism on caste system were based on many grounds, and he writes, the effect of caste on the ethics of Hindus is simply deplorable. Caste has killed public spirit, and this is something about the celebration of India's existence for millennia. But there is a obstruction, there is a restriction of public spirit or coming together to fight when there is a external invasion or there is a common challenges for the whole society, which is prevented, obstructed in India because the practices of caste which does not allow such public spirit or the common solidarity to emerge in the first place. So he writes, the effect of caste on the ethics of Hindus is simply deplorable, and caste has killed public spirit. Caste has destroyed the sense of public charity. Caste has made public opinion impossible, because the public opinion in India is largely governed by the station of the individual in the caste hierarchy. So there is no true public opinion, so to say. A Hindu public is his caste. His responsibility is to his caste. His loyalty is restricted only to his caste. Virtue has become caste ridden, and morality has become caste born. In such a society, how one can think of a public spirit or public opinion which represents the interest of all sections of society, where even the morality, ethics and virtue is caste driven or caste born. So in that kind of society, the possibility of emerging a political community which should be sustainable, which can continue for long, is something which he was very skeptical about. And the criticism that he has against the caste system or the Hindu religion which gives sanction to such practices, or because this practice is followed by millions because they believe in the Hindu Shastra, according to which they thought these practices or the social practices or evil practices of caste and untouchability is justified. So he criticized caste system because caste is not just a and this is also the rational argument he is putting forward. So first of all, there are many justification of caste system, and one of such justification is that caste is basically division of labor, and every society has such division of labor. Later on it has acquired a degenerated form, and that can be reformed, but caste system in itself is not wrong because there is a division of labor on the basis of caste. So he criticized such arguments and argued that caste is not just a division of labor, but it is also a division of laborers, and said it is pity that caste even today has its defenders. So as many people were defending the caste system, the caste is not merely a division of labor, it is also a division of laborers. Civilized society undoubtedly needs division of labor, but in no civilized society is division of labor accompanied by this unnatural division of laborers into watertight compartments. So the caste system is not merely a division of laborers, which is quite different from division of labor. It is a hierarchy in which divisions of laborers are graded one above the other. So that's the inequality or the discrimination based on caste is not one to one and one universal which is applicable to everyone. It is graded depending upon the station of one's life in this hierarchy, one over the other. In no other country is the division of labor accompanied by this gradation of laborers. So he was very critical of those who are arguing or justifying caste as the basis of division of labor, which is good in itself, but it has degenerated, which one can reform, and therefore caste does not need to be annihilated or eradicated. So he put forth a strong criticism against that view that caste is a division of labor, and he believed that the division of labor is not spontaneous, it is not based on the natural aptitude of the individual, and most importantly that the choice of individual is not guaranteed or not given in this division of so called labor, because it does not depend on the aptitude of the person or the worth of the person, but because he was born into a caste, he must perform certain function, certain duty that is associated to that particular caste. So it has nothing to do with the aptitude of the individual or the choice of the individual, where that individual is comfortable or efficient in doing such work or some other work. So in this caste based division of labor, so to say, the question of aptitude or choice is simply absent. He also argued against the rigid caste boundaries. He realized that each caste is assigned boundaries so that each one may at once be recognized as belonging to its particular caste. So there is the rigidity in this caste system, where everyone is his role or her role is fixed according to his caste, and that started from Brahmins. It was followed by the lower caste and further lower down the orders, and so every caste becomes a kind of closed groups in itself, and their role was fixed, and there is no possibility of ever coming out of such such conditions or such status. So for caste system, to operate or to shape the everyday life of Indian, it is the notion of purity and pollution which reproduced caste in everyday lives of Indians. And in this regard, Ambedkar, using Bhandarkar's paper on foreign elements in the Hindu population, argues that considering the racial intermingling throughout the human history, it is delusionary on the parts of many caste Hindus to think about their caste as pure and free from all the foreign elements. So, this basis of caste discrimination and caste hierarchy, which rests on the notion of purity and pollution, is punctured by Ambedkar, where he is using Bhandarkar's paper on foreign elements in the Hindu population to argue that it is delusionary on the part of caste Hindus to think of their caste as pure and free from foreign elements, considering the racial intermingling throughout the human history. So, he stated that Hindu society was a collection of castes fixed in watertight compartments with graded hierarchy that made an associated corporate life virtually impossible. So, the argument against the caste and caste discrimination is based on this understanding that it obstructs the growth of associated corporate life impossible in Hindu society because of this graded hierarchy and watertight compartmentalization of different castes and their sectarian living. So, the morality and ethics or the norms of public life is shaped by the particular caste and communal identity, and not really a kind of free associational living which can help in constructing a progressive forward looking society in India. So, Ambedkar argued that caste prevents Hindu from forming a real society or nation where everyone, each member is treated equally, and caste has completely disorganized and demoralized the Hindus. He writes, in every Hindu, the consciousness that exists is the consciousness of his caste and not the whole society as such. So, it divides, and it divides not just in social and economic sense, but also in psychological, emotional and moral and ethical sense. So, the consciousness or the conscience that or ethics that a individual Hindu carries is the conscience, consciousness or the ethics of his particular caste or her particular caste, and that is the reason why the Hindus cannot be said to form a society or a nation. So, this is the biggest hindrance according to Ambedkar in forging a national identity or a collective identity among the Hindus. So, this way Ambedkar painfully stated the worst feature of caste system as anti-social spirit. It does not allow to form a collective identity. So, he argued that caste is a powerful weapon for preventing all reforms, as the law gives each caste an autonomy to regulate its membership and punish dissenters with excommunication. So, the social boycott or excommunication was very prevalent in India to punish those dissenters and those who were arguing for any social reforms. However, at this point one also needs to remember the struggle against the caste system or caste hierarchy or the priestly class is not new. From the very beginning, the rise of Buddhism or Jainism, then in medieval times the Bhakti or Sufi movement is also in a sense a struggle or a assertion against the hierarchy or against the discrimination based on status, be it economics or social or religious, and there is this movement continued and acquire more political form during the anti-colonial struggle, and Ambedkar provided the foundational or the intellectual foundation for such a struggle, and also led many political movement for reforming or for annihilating such practices. So in his opinion, caste in the hands of orthodox has been a powerful weapon, therefore, for persecuting the reformers and killing all reforms. So the caste must be annihilated for any social, economic and political reforms to happen, because without such annihilation no reforms is possible. In fact, it provides a kind of weapon in the hands of orthodoxy to prohibit all kind of reforms or punish all kind of reformers. So he believed that the real key to destroying caste is the rejection of Shastras. So how to destroy caste? He writes, the enemy you must grapple with is not the people who observe caste, but the Shastras, the Hindu text or religious text which teach them this religion of caste. Criticizing and ridiculing people for not interdining or intermarrying or occasional holding intercaste dinners and celebrating intercaste marriages is a futile method of achieving the desired end. Of course, he argued for intercaste marriage or intercaste as a way forward to fight caste based discrimination, but the real remedy for destroying caste or religion of caste is to destroy the belief in the sanctity of the Shastras. So the millions of Hindu followers practice or reproduce caste in their daily lives, believing in the Shastras sanction of such practices, and so the religion is deeply embedded in their sense of caste based discrimination or the caste hierarchy. So he was arguing for the fighting the authority of the caste which provide sanction to such caste practices. And there he differed from Gandhi and many Congress leaders, where they argued that the Hinduism does not really talk about caste and caste based discrimination. Essentially in Hinduism everyone is treated equally and everyone is capable of realizing the supreme self or to connect with the supreme self or attain the spiritual heights with. So there is no prohibition on the basis of caste and other things also. So the connection between Hinduism and the caste system that Ambedkar argued for was contested and critiqued by many leaders including Gandhi. So Ambedkar was critical of the attempt of social reforms by many contemporaries including Gandhi. He stated that reforms working for the removal of untouchability including Mahatma Gandhi do not seem to realize that the acts of the people or discriminatory acts of the people are merely the results of their beliefs inculcated in their minds by the Shastras, and that people will not change their conduct until they cease to believe in the sanctity of the Shastras on which their conducts are founded. So for Ambedkar, those social reformers fighting for these practices of caste or untouchability need to understand that the people and their belief in the caste based discrimination is based on their belief in the Shastras or the text which gives sanction to such practices. So unless that is destroyed or that is fighted, there cannot be change in the conduct of the people, even when many reformers themselves in their individual life free themselves from the caste based discrimination. But for the millions, their practices is governed by their belief in the religious sanction of such caste practices. So he also felt that the prohibition in the Hindu religion against intermarriage, interdining, interdrinking or social intercourse have been said to show people of unequal ranks their actual status in the society. So the caste is something which actually produced and reproduced in everyday life. When on the question of marriage is the most important way to maintain the caste exclusivity to prevent any kind of intercourse between or among different castes. So that is, these bonds are symbols of inequality inter-dining, inter-drinking or inter-caste marriages are the mechanism through which the status of an individual is shown in the caste Hindu society, and he believed that the only intermarriage can lead to true bond to happen and not just inter-drinking, inter-dining or just the formal interaction between and among the caste. So he did consider inter-caste marriages as the possible solution for the development of true bonds among and different castes in Hindu society, and also to fight against the religious texts which give authority to such caste discrimination. So he believed that a true religion, therefore one also needs to understand that he is not against a religion. He is against, so many people may have this sense that Ambedkar is fighting the religion. Actually he is reinterpreting the religion which believes in social harmony, which believes in social equality, which believes in true fellow feelings and the principle of fraternity, liberty and justice and equality. So he believed that a true religion cultivates responsibility for one's action. A religious act may not be a correct act, but must at least be a responsible act. To permit of this responsibility, religion must mainly be a matter of principles only. It cannot be a matter of rules. The moment it degenerates into rules, it ceases to be religion, as it kills responsibility, which is the essence of truly religious act. So he argued that Hinduism is nothing but a set of rules that governs the everyday lives and not a matter of principle, which is about the responsibility of individual towards self, towards the other, and not just a set of rules which governs or dictates the everyday lives and choices of the individual. And he founded a lot of doctrinal cleavages within the Hinduism, and that's why he gradually developed a criticism against the Hinduism or Sikhness, identified the Sikh practices within Hinduism and lost all hope in reforming such religion also. Now to study this Gandhi-Ambedkar debate, we find that Ambedkar studied Gandhi very closely, and especially the Gandhian intervention, the overall mass mobilization that Gandhi led, and therefore from 1920s when Gandhi was leading the mass movement and giving a kind of combined movement against the British rule or the foreign rule, and priority of attaining political independence and then moving to social and other religious reforms, Ambedkar take a different route by engaging with the colonial ruler, colonial administrator, and through his association with the colonial rule, he was also trying to protect the interest of the untouchables or the Dalits. At the same time, when he was also involved in many satyagraha or many non-violent agitational politics for the assertion of self-respect and dignity of untouchables within the Hindu society. So these two figures, Gandhi and Ambedkar, is very interesting to understand their visions, and in fact Ambedkar's views and his politics did influence Gandhi's from 1930s till his death in 1948. He continuously tried to eradicate untouchability or social discrimination based on caste, and he called them Harijans, and he was equally perhaps involved in this eradication of caste and in the question of untouchability as well. So Ambedkar studied Gandhian intervention in nationalist movement very closely. In his works like Mr. Gandhi and the Emancipation of the Untouchables, Rana Day, Gandhi and Jinnah, and what Congress and Gandhi have done to the untouchables, he critically examines the views of Gandhi and Gandhism on caste and its limitation in their approach in solving the caste problems. So there is a lots of confusing or speculative arguments in the Gandhian which Ambedkar found, and he claims to provide a solid or a kind of pragmatic political solution to the problem of caste and untouchability. So initially Ambedkar was convinced about Gandhi's attempts to reform society and believed that this could bring about political reforms as well. However, he became skeptical towards Gandhi when he felt that Gandhi succumbed to the pressure of orthodoxy and placed the untouchables at the mercy of caste Hindus. So, the changing of heart or the kind of politics Gandhi followed led Ambedkar to question or interrogate his methods and politics about social reforms, and especially to protect the interest of untouchables or Dalits. So, this suspicion became much more clearer when he felt that Gandhi was trying to placate Muslims while isolating the untouchables during the Round Table Conference. And when they met in second Round Table Conference, from then on their differences on caste question or the separate electorates for the untouchables becomes much more sharper. However, both of them took very conscious or sincere effort to eradicate or to remove caste and untouchability from Hindu society. Ambedkar argued for the separate electorate for the untouchables because separate electorates guarantees that a representative enjoys the confidence of the electorate who are his special concern. However, a majority, according to him, cannot have separate electorate, as it would be a permanent domination of the majority over the minority. The granting of special electorates for the untouchables was unacceptable to Gandhi because he did not want further destruction or further fragmentation of Hindu society. He wanted to consolidate or integrate the excluded community from the fold of Hinduism or Hinduism. So, Gandhian notion of Hindu or Hinduism is much more inclusive or about integrating differences or different communities or excluded communities within the fold of Hinduism. However, this communal award or separate electorates for the untouchables was about providing separate electorates for the untouchables on the basis of their identity, the caste identity, which is different from the majoritarian Hindu community. So, these special electorates, we have discussed these circumstances in our previous lecture, which you can refer to. So, in 1932, when this award was granted to the untouchables, largely because of Ambedkar's negotiation in all the three Round Table Conference with the British, Gandhi started fast unto death, and Ambedkar very reluctantly, because of the political pressure or the social pressure, yielded to such demand and accepted Gandhi's offer of separate electorates during the primary elections and increased number of reserve seats for the untouchables and joint electorates for the assembly seats. This is known as Pune Pact, and we have discussed also in our previous lecture how this pact does not satisfy or end the differences between Ambedkar and the Gandhi. So, many of the followers of Gandhi believe that Gandhi has yielded a lot to Ambedkar, and Ambedkar believed cheated, or his followers felt cheated by the foreseeable compromise that Gandhi forced upon them. So, after the Pune Pact, Ambedkar became a member of the executive committee of an anti-untouchability league that was formed, which is also named as Harijan Sevak Sangh, but he resigned from this body as he could not accept the strategies of the league to eradicate or annihilate caste. And after 1933, Ambedkar fought a relentless battle against Gandhi, although they continue to share a number of concerns in common, which we will discuss. So, from this time on, Gandhi and Ambedkar pursued distinctly separate paths, Gandhi giving the name Harijan, people of God, to untouchables, and from 1930s he is equally or perhaps more active in the social and economic sphere than in the political sphere. So, Gandhi giving the name Harijan to untouchables and pleading with caste Hindus to abolish untouchability. So, there is a kind of pleading or a kind of request for change in heart to remove untouchability or abolish untouchability. For Ambedkar, it was a political fight. It was a legal political fight which cannot be achieved merely by appeal or pleading to the caste Hindu who are privileged or who are beneficiary of such exploitative system of caste discrimination or untouchability. So therefore he formed a political party, and the party attempted to abolish hereditary discrimination in village economic structure and also question the term Harijan. For Ambedkar, untouchable is someone who is broken, or Marathi word as we have discussed for Dalit that he used is about someone who is broken and broken in spirit to fight even for their self respect. And this is the greatest contribution of Ambedkar perhaps, to develop the consciousness or a sense of empowerment among those communities who were in such a submissive state that they were not even conscious of their discrimination or or the constant humiliation. So he was very critical of this term, which is Gandhian term, and that is Harijan. So one of the elements of Gandhi's attitude that disturbed Ambedkar the most was his idealization of Chatur Varna system or Varnashram Dharma in Gandhi. Gandhi believed that all people could be classed according to occupation of equal dignity within the four broad rubrics of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Sudra, and untouchables can be included within the classical Varna, which falls outside the Varna system should be included as Sudra. So for Gandhi, these divisions between four Varna and his differentiation between Varna and caste is something which Ambedkar found very confusing or very problematic to understand the problem. So however, for Gandhi, such divisions are not necessarily exploitative because it is about occupations, different occupations as such. So so he thought these occupations of all kind are equal in worth, and he has experimented in many of his ashrams, but largely outside his ashrams in the everyday lives. The people do not have same respect or mutual respect to all occupations. So in India there is a kind of contempt towards the lower occupations and those who are involved in a particular occupations, unlike Gandhian belief of equal respect or equal dignity to all occupation, which is the his justification for Varnashram or Chaturvarna system. Ambedkar found it very problematic, in fact disgusting in his assessment. So this of course was unacceptable to Ambedkar, and he argued that the reorganization of Hindu society on the basis of Chaturvarna is harmful, and that the Hindu society must be reorganized on a religious basis which recognizes the principle of liberty, equality and fraternity. So Ambedkar studied the caste system and critically analyzed the justification it receives from Hindu scriptures. His thought does not deal merely with removal of untouchability, which was but one part of anti-caste movement. He was also concerned with the overall annihilation of caste, not just the discrimination of the caste and reforming the caste, but the annihilation of caste is what Ambedkar was aiming for or fighting for. Gandhi of course was in favor of abolition of caste based discrimination. In personal conduct too, he did not practice caste, as many social reformers did not, but in their articulation or engagement they substantially differ for Ambedkar rights kind of understanding or approach to caste question. But he intended to emphasize more on the question of untouchability than on the caste system as a whole. Gandhi tends to search possible areas of cooperation and integration of the caste, whereas Ambedkar was trying and fighting for the annihilation of the caste. So it is interesting to see how Gandhi and Ambedkar negotiated with tradition, and their difference are sharp here as well. So Gandhi engages in a creative dialogue with tradition. He tries to find out the element of truth in tradition and emphasize on those truths. In many cases he attached new meanings to traditional symbols, and he gives an impression that he is asking for nothing new in substance, but for the continuance of order. So even the Satya, Ahimsa or the vocabulary that Gandhi used in a new way, inversing a lot of their logical or intellectual space in the tradition, and he inversed that to suit the politics of the modern times or the mass mobilization that he was leading. So Gandhi tried to have a kind of constructive dialogue with the tradition or find the elements of truth in those tradition and trying to revive those truths in the modern politics. Ambedkar, on the other hand, was in search of the ideology that justifies such exploitative systems such as caste. He felt that tradition was this ideology. Injustice based on caste could not have continued unless it was legitimized by its tradition. He also believed that the tradition of Hindu society was predominated by Brahmanical interests. As such, he could not ignore the role of tradition in situating caste as a moral code of Hindu society. This prompted Ambedkar to take a critical view of entire Hindu traditions or Hinduism, which he also considered as the Brahmanical tradition. So, however, the difference in the structure of their discourse did not hide their common visions, which they share, and D. Nagaraja and many scholars in contemporary times is talking about the possible dialogue between Ambedkar and Gandhi on the question of social and economic transformation, especially for those who are at the lowest level of caste hierarchy. Both believed that the social transformation could come about only by social action. So, the role of social actions or activities are as important as its articulation in by the thinkers. So, therefore, they relied heavily on mobilizing people or public opinion against such injustices based on caste. Social actions pursued by Gandhi and Ambedkar were for them both democratic. It was in the form of popular struggles. Gandhi many times appeared to be favoring compromises and avoiding conflict. So, the Gandhian politics was about popular struggle, which many times favor compromises over conflict or confrontation. Ambedkar too is seen by many, even by his followers, as a supporter of non-violent protest or politics or agitational politics to assert the self-respect or the dignity of the untouchables. So, the Ambedkarite critique of Gandhi is centered on the latter's fast unto death in opposition to McDonald Award or separate electorates for Dalits. However, this act had two different criticisms. In the word of Gopal Guru, the critique leads to two opposing conceptions of this act. The male Ambedkarites look at Gandhi's fast as an act of unfairness in as much as it coerces Ambedkar into accepting the Pune Pact. Conversely, female Ambedkarites positively assess the role of Ambedkar, who in their judgment acted fairly in saving the life of Mahatma Gandhi signing the Pune Pact. So, there is a difference between two gender within the Ambedkarites movement about Gandhi and his role and his dialogue with Ambedkar on the caste question. And therefore, Gandhi-Ambedkar debate remains crucial to understand the political philosophy of these two great philosophers, whose ideas help in shaping the public and political discourse in contemporary India. One should also understand that Gandhian and Ambedkarites discourse are not antithetical. It should be Ambedkarites. Both are concerned with the issue of emancipation as well as transformation of Hindu society from the clutches of caste and untouchability. So, despite of their differences, they were also arguing for emancipation or liberation of society which is caste ridden or based on caste discriminations and untouchability, which prohibit or which weakens the bond or the relationship between and among the members of the same political community or same nation. So, this is all on this question of caste and Gandhi-Ambedkar debates. But finally, one also needs to understand in the contemporary politics the re-emergence of Ambedkar as an icon or use of Ambedkar as a symbol for many political struggles, which is also about social and economic transformation, social justice or egalitarian society. Somewhere in this discourse, his focus on annihilation or eradication of caste is somewhere lost, and there is now new kind of politics which is emerging, where many caste is trying to fight for the recognition as a OBC or SC or ST. So, the politics in post-independence India has taken a different turn than perhaps Ambedkar was arguing for. That is about eradication or annihilation of caste to create a society, to create a nation which would be based on the principle of equality, justice and liberty. But however, Gandhi and Ambedkar and dialogue between the two remains crucial and can provide the possible solution to create a post-colonial society which would be much more egalitarian, much more fair or just society, where the individual and the collective group or community can prosper, or that will help in strengthening the nation or its prosperity as well. So, many scholars is also arguing about this possible dialogue or revisiting the dialogue between Gandhi and Ambedkar to understand the problem of caste in even in contemporary India and how to fight it. So, on this question of caste in Ambedkar, you can refer to some of these texts. Most importantly is this original text by Ambedkar, which is Annihilation of Caste, and also you can refer to some of the chapters from Valerian Rodrigues, the essential writings of B.R. Ambedkar, and also some articles in EPW about Gandhi Ambedkar interface, when shall the twain meet, or Ambedkar as a political philosopher. Other texts which we have been referring in this course is Sources of Indian Tradition or Political Thought in Modern India, also Makers of Modern India by Ramchandra Guha you can refer to, and also Understanding Ambedkar's Contribution of Construction of National Movement by Gopal Guru. This text you can refer to. That's all for today. In the next class, we are going to discuss Ambedkar's views on liberal democracy and constitutional morality. That would be also the concluding lecture on Ambedkar. So, thanks for listening. Thank you all. Thank you.